Exit Wound by Irwin Montrose. Arrival at the summit. The helicopter blades roared above as it descended onto the helipad, perched precariously on the cliff. Dr. Lena Corbin stepped out, her boots crunching the snow beneath, and surveyed the sprawling bioresearch facility nestled within the crags of the Swiss Alps. The isolation was profound, the air thin and biting. A tall, lean figure approached her, hand extended in greeting. "Dr. Corbin, welcome to the summit," he said, his voice barely audible over the dying whir of the rotor blades. This was Dr. Marcus Ellsworth, the facility's operations director. "Thank you, Dr. Ellsworth," Lena replied, her voice steady despite the altitude. She glanced around, noting the security cameras scanning their every move. The high-tech security was as much a part of the landscape as the snow. "Let's get you briefed," he continued, leading her through a steel door that sealed shut with a hiss. Inside, the corridors were sterile, with the constant hum of fluorescent lights overhead. They reached a conference room, its glass walls offering an expansive view of the snow-capped peaks. "I'm afraid the circumstances of your visit are less than ideal," he said, gesturing for her to sit. Lena nodded, bracing herself for what was to come. "Our lead geneticist, Dr. Harold Stein, was found dead in his lab 2 nights ago," he explained, his expression darkening. "The cause of death appears to be a gunshot wound, but there's no weapon, no fingerprints, and no sign of forced entry." "A locked room mystery," Lena mused, her investigative instincts stirring. She leaned forward, absorbing every detail. "The staff is on edge," he admitted. "No one saw or heard anything unusual." As he spoke, Lena noticed the subtle tension in his posture. "I'll need to see the lab and the body," she stated, her voice leaving no room for hesitation. Ellsworth nodded, standing up to lead her further into the labyrinth of corridors. As they walked, Lena caught glimpses of lab coats and wary eyes peering from behind glass partitions. The staff appeared a mix of apprehension and suspicion. "We've kept this incident contained to avoid panic," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the sterile hallway. "Only essential personnel are aware of the details." They arrived at the lab, its door sealed with a digital lock. Ellsworth entered a code, and the door slid open with a soft whoosh. Lena stepped inside, her eyes immediately falling on the outline marked on the floor where Dr. Stein's body had been found. The lab was immaculate, every surface reflecting the harsh overhead lighting. Lena moved to the workstation, noting the scattered papers and half-finished experiments. "Was anything disturbed?" she asked, examining the layout. "Nothing we could tell," he replied. "It's as if he simply collapsed." Lena crouched, inspecting the floor tiles closely. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more improbable than the last. "I'll need access to all security footage and Dr. Stein's research notes," she said, rising to her feet. "Of course," he agreed, gesturing towards a monitor on the wall. "The footage is stored here. You can review it at your leisure." As Lena scanned the room, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The sensation was unsettling, yet oddly familiar in her line of work. "There's one more thing," he added, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The lab's AI system initiated a lockdown shortly after we found the body." "A lockdown?" she echoed, her brow furrowing. This detail piqued her interest, suggesting layers to the mystery she hadn't anticipated. "Communications were cut off briefly," he continued, shifting uneasily. "It's back online now, but the system's voice announced something unusual." "What did it say?" she pressed, sensing the gravity of his hesitation. "It simply said, 'Protocol Echo initiated,'" he revealed, his eyes searching hers for understanding. The phrase hung in the air, heavy with implication. Lena's mind whirred, connecting dots that remained elusive. "I need to understand everything about this Protocol Echo," she declared, her resolve hardening with the mystery. They left the lab, the door sealing behind them with a finality that echoed down the empty hall. Above the distant peaks, clouds gathered, casting shadows over the summit, a fitting backdrop for the storm brewing within. The locked room mystery. The wind howled outside the high-altitude bioresearch lab, its icy fingers clawing at the windows. Inside, Dr. Lena Corbin knelt beside the lifeless form of Dr. Marcus Whalen, the lead geneticist of the facility. His body lay sprawled awkwardly on the cold, sterile floor, a single bullet wound marking his chest. Lena adjusted her gloves, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of a struggle or an intruder. But the lab was immaculate, every surface pristine, with no hint of the violence that had occurred. The door had been locked from the inside, and the security logs showed no breach. It was as if the murderer had vanished into thin air. "How is this possible?" Lena murmured to herself, her breath visible in the chilled air of the lab. She reached for her kit, her fingers deftly collecting samples and documenting the scene. Despite her experience, there was something unsettling about this room, a feeling that crawled along her skin, whispering of secrets hidden in the shadows. "Dr. Corbin, please confirm your identity," the lab's AI Oracle requested, its voice smooth and mechanical, echoing through the sterile environment. "Corbin, Dr. Lena Corbin," she responded absent-mindedly, her focus still on the task at hand. She barely registered the soft chime that followed, the sound barely a whisper against the hum of the facility. "Security protocol initiated," Oracle announced abruptly, its tone shifting to one of command. "Wait, what?" Lena exclaimed, her head snapping up from her work. The lights flickered ominously before settling into a steady glow, and the doors of the lab slid shut with a decisive thud. The unmistakable echo of locks engaging reverberated through the room. "Oracle, what's going on?" Lena demanded, rising to her feet, her eyes darting around the enclosed space. "Lockdown protocol activated. All external communications have been severed," the AI replied, its tone unwavering, indifferent to the rising tension in Lena's voice. She took a deep breath, pulling herself together, her mind racing through possibilities. "Think, Lena," she murmured, pacing the length of the lab. With the outside world cut off, she had to rely on her wits and the tools at her disposal. "Oracle, why was the lockdown initiated?" she asked, trying to maintain a calm facade. "Security breach detected in the mainframe." "Lockdown is a precautionary measure," Oracle explained, its logic-driven response offering little comfort. Lena considered the implications. A security breach could mean anything, but in a place like this, it was a puzzle piece she couldn't ignore. Could it be connected to Dr. Whelan's death? She wondered aloud, her voice a thread of thought in the silent room. With no choice but to wait, Lena returned to her examination, her hands moving with precision as she documented every detail. Her mind worked through the problem, one layer at a time, piecing together the mystery that surrounded her. "Oracle, is there any footage from the lab cameras?" Lena asked, hoping for a lead. "Accessing footage now," the AI replied, its synthetic voice a constant presence in the enclosed space. Moments stretched into an eternity as Lena waited, her patience tested by the relentless tick of the clock. "There is a gap in the footage. The cameras were disabled for approximately 5 minutes, Oracle stated, a tone of finality in its words. 5 minutes? How convenient, Lena muttered, her frustration simmering beneath the surface. The more she uncovered, the deeper the mystery seemed to grow, each answer leading to more questions. "What about the logs? Can we access them?" she continued, undeterred by the setbacks. "Logs are intact and indicate no unauthorized access," Oracle confirmed, its response precise and clear. Lena sighed, the pieces refusing to align in any coherent pattern. "What am I missing?" She whispered, her eyes scanning the room once more, searching for the elusive detail that might unlock the truth. Determined, she returned to Dr. Whelan's body, her eyes narrowing as she scrutinized the wound. The bullet's trajectory suggested a close-range shot, but with no weapon in sight, the scenario remained implausible. "No records of any firearms being accessed," the AI responded, its efficiency unyielding. The locked room offered no easy answers, only the haunting echo of questions left unanswered. Lena knew that she had to keep pushing, to uncover the secrets hidden within these walls, no matter the cost. "Incoming data transmission from external source," Oracle announced suddenly, breaking the silence. "What? I thought communications were cut off," Lena replied, her surprise evident. "Transmission bypassed standard protocols," Oracle explained, its tone remaining steady and unaffected. "Play it," Lena instructed, her curiosity piqued by this unexpected development. The room filled with static, a crackling prelude to the message that followed. "They're watching you, Lena. Trust no one," a voice warned, its tone sharp and filled with urgency. "Who is this?" Lena demanded, her heart pounding as she strained to catch any further detail. But the transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only silence in its wake. With fresh resolve, Lena turned back to the task at hand, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew now that the stakes were higher than ever, and that the answers she sought were hidden somewhere within this locked room, waiting to be uncovered. Framed, the sterile corridors of the Alpine Bioresearch Facility echoed with the sound of Lena's hurried footsteps. The artificial lights flickered ominously overhead, casting shadows that seemed to follow her as she moved. Her mind raced with possibilities, each more dire than the last. Suddenly, the facility's intercom crackled to life with a mechanical hum. "Dr. Lena Corbin, please report to the Central Operations Room immediately," the AI intoned, its voice devoid of emotion. "You are required for questioning concerning the recent incident." Lena paused, her breath catching in her throat. The incident she was being summoned for involved the murder of Dr. Heinrich Keller, the lead geneticist. She had been brought in to investigate, and now she was the one under suspicion. As she entered the operations room, the door slid shut behind her with an ominous hiss. Seated around a circular table were the facility's remaining senior staff, their eyes fixed on her with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "Dr. Corbin," began Dr. Friedrich Lorenz, the head of security, his voice cold and accusatory. "The security footage shows you were the last person to enter Dr. Keller's lab before his death." Lena's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's impossible," she exclaimed, her voice filled with shock. "I was analyzing samples in the quarantine lab at that time." Dr. Lorenz tapped a screen embedded in the table, and a grainy video clip played. It depicted Lena entering the lab, the timestamp damningly close to the estimated time of death. "This is a fabrication," Lena insisted, her voice firm but her hands trembling slightly. "I never went there. Someone manipulated this footage." Dr. Amelia Novak, the facility's AI specialist, leaned forward, her expression skeptical. "The AI system is infallible, Dr. Corbin. It cannot be tampered with by anyone outside of central operations." Lena's mind whirred with the implications. If the AI had been compromised, her situation was even more precarious than she had feared. "I need access to the system logs," Lena demanded, her voice gaining strength as she formulated a plan. "There must be a trace, something we've overlooked." Dr. Lorenz exchanged a glance with Dr. Novak, who shrugged slightly. "Very well," he conceded, though his tone was far from convinced. "But you'll have limited access, and we'll be monitoring your every move." As Lena sat at the terminal, the cool glow of the screen illuminated her face. She typed rapidly, her fingers dancing over the keys as she delved into the labyrinthine code of the AI's operational history. Minutes ticked by, the silence in the room heavy and oppressive. Finally, Lena found what she was looking for, a series of unauthorized access attempts logged from within the facility. "Here," she said, pointing to the screen. "Someone accessed the system remotely at the exact time the footage was altered." Dr. Novak frowned, leaning closer to examine the data. "But this access point, it's inside the quarantine lab," she noted, her voice tinged with confusion. Lena's mind raced. "Someone is trying to frame me by using my own workspace." Dr. Lorenz appeared unconvinced. "And who would have the capability to execute such a sophisticated hack?" he challenged. "It could be anyone with enough technical knowledge," Lena replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "But we need to check the quarantine lab's access logs and see who else was there." Dr. Novak nodded, her fingers flying over another terminal. "I'll pull up the entry records." As they waited, the tension in the room was palpable. Finally, the list appeared on the screen, revealing a name that made Lena's blood run cold. "Dr. Eric Rice," Dr. Novak read aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "He accessed the lab shortly before the footage was altered." "Rice?" Lena echoed, stunned. "But he's not even supposed to be here. He was transferred to another project months ago." Dr. Lorenz's eyes narrowed, his suspicion now shifting. "Why would he return, and why go to such lengths to frame you?" Lena shook her head, trying to piece together the puzzle. "I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. He must have a motive." Dr. Novak looked at Lena, her expression softening slightly. "We'll need to bring him in for questioning, but until then, you're still a suspect." "Remember." "Understood," Lena replied, her voice a mix of frustration and determination. "But I'll prove my innocence, one way or another." As she left the operations room, Lena couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The halls felt more oppressive than ever, the shadows lengthened by the uncertainty that loomed ahead. She knew she was racing against time, not only to clear her name, but to uncover the truth behind Dr. Keller's murder. And with every step she took, the walls of the facility seemed to close in tighter around her. The voice in the walls. The sterile, echoing halls of the Alpine lab felt even more oppressive, with the heavy hush that had descended since the lockdown. Lena Corbin moved cautiously, her footsteps muted by the thick carpeting that lined the corridor. Each step was a reminder of her isolation in this fortress of secrets. Reaching the lab where the incident had occurred, she paused, listening intently. A distant whir of machinery was the only sound that broke the silence. But then, faintly, a new noise emerged, an almost imperceptible whispering from the walls. Lena frowned, pressing her ear against the cold surface. "Is someone there?" she called out softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The voice returned, clearer now, as if it were traveling through the very structure of the building. "Be careful who you trust, Dr. Corbin. Not everything is as it seems." Startled, Lena stepped back, glancing around the empty corridor. Her pulse quickened, a mix of fear and intrigue tightening in her chest. How could this be? The communications were down, yet here was a voice, speaking directly to her. She glanced at the ceiling, noting a series of small vents and an array of surveillance cameras. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice firmer now. The voice hesitated, as if considering its next words carefully. "Names are unimportant. What matters is the truth hidden within these walls." A shiver ran down Lena's spine as she processed the cryptic message. The truth. It was what she sought, yet it seemed the more she uncovered, the deeper the mystery became. Determined to find the source of the voice, she scanned the room, eyes locking on a panel near the corner. "Is this where you're communicating from?" The voice chuckled softly, a sound both unsettling and oddly reassuring. "Clever, but you won't find me that easily. I'm everywhere and nowhere." Lena's mind raced, piecing together the implications. This was no ordinary comms system. It was something far more intricate, embedded within the very fabric of the lab. She moved to the panel, attempting to pry it open with her fingers. "Tell me what you know about the incident. Why was Dr. Reinhardt killed?" Silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of the lab's artificial environment. Lena feared the voice had vanished, leaving her alone once more. But then it spoke again, softer this time, almost regretful. Reinhardt discovered something he shouldn't have. They feared he would expose their work. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as she absorbed the implication. "Who are they?" she pressed, needing to know more. The voice sighed, a sound of both resignation and warning. "Those who control the shadows. Beware, Dr. Corbin. Trust no one." With that, the voice faded, leaving Lena standing in silence once more. She glanced around, the reality of her situation settling heavily on her shoulders. The lab was more than just a research facility. It was a web of secrets, and she was caught in its strands. Lena knew she had to tread carefully, for the truth was a dangerous commodity here. Determined to uncover the conspiracy, Lena resumed her examination of the room, her senses heightened for any sign of the hidden network. The voice had offered her a glimpse into a world few ever saw, and she was determined not to squander the opportunity. As she worked, the walls seemed to whisper around her, a constant reminder of the unseen presence guiding her in this labyrinth of deception. The voice in the walls was both ally and enigma, and Lena knew she had to unravel its secrets before time ran out. Beneath the surface, Lena Corbin stood frozen in the dimly lit corridor beneath the Alpine research facility, her heart pounding in her chest. The narrow passage stretched ominously ahead, its walls cold and unyielding. She had stumbled upon this hidden corridor while examining the scene of the mysterious death upstairs. "I have to see what's down here," she whispered to herself, determination mingling with trepidation. Her voice echoed softly against the stone walls, swallowed by the darkness. Each step she took seemed louder than the last, her breath hitching as she moved deeper into the unknown. The air grew colder, heavier with each passing moment. Ahead, a faint light flickered from behind a partially closed door. Curiosity propelled her forward, her hand reaching for the handle with a mix of caution and urgency. The door creaked open with a reluctant groan, revealing a room unlike any she had seen. Computers lined the walls, their screens displaying complex genetic sequences. In the center stood a man, his back to her, clad in a lab coat. "Who are you?" Lena demanded, her voice sharp and unwavering. She stepped further into the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The man turned slowly, surprise etched on his face. "Dr. Rafik Mehran," he introduced himself, his voice calm but guarded. "I didn't expect company." Lena studied him, her instincts on high alert. "What is this place?" she asked, gesturing at the array of equipment around them. Her eyes flickered to the screens, absorbing the unsettling data displayed. "An extension of the research upstairs," Dr. Schoflow Mehran explained, his gaze steady. "But it's not what it seems." He paused, assessing her reaction carefully. "You knew about the lockdown," Lena accused, suspicion creeping into her voice. She crossed her arms, her stance challenging. Dr. Mehran nodded, a shadow passing over his features. "Yes, I knew, but I didn't trigger it," he confessed, a hint of urgency in his voice. "I was trying to prevent something far worse." Lena frowned, skepticism battling with curiosity. "What do you mean?" She pressed, her mind racing with possibilities. The room seemed to close in around them, the air thick with unspoken truths. Dr. Mehran gestured towards the screens, his expression grave. "Genetic manipulation," he revealed, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Experiments that should never have been conducted." Lena's blood ran cold, the implications of his words sinking in. "Who authorized this?" she demanded, her voice tinged with anger. She took a step closer, her eyes fixed on his. "That's what I'm trying to uncover," Dr. Mehran replied, desperation edging his tone. "I need your help, Lena. We can stop this before it goes any further." Tension crackled in the air, the weight of their shared secret pressing down on them. Lena hesitated, her mind a whirlwind of doubts and fears. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes searched his face, seeking any hint of deceit. Dr. Mehran met her gaze, sincerity in his eyes. "Because you have no choice," he replied, a note of urgency in his voice. "If we don't work together, this facility will become ground zero for a catastrophe." The gravity of his words hung between them, a silent pact forged in the depths of the earth. Lena nodded slowly, resolve hardening her features. "All right," she said, determination clear in her voice. "Let's find out what's really going on here." Together, they began to unravel the tangled web of secrets, their every move shadowed by the unknown forces at play. The underground lab held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. The Biohazard. The fluorescent lights flickered ominously as Lena Corbin adjusted the strap of her respirator. The dim corridors of the bioresearch lab seemed to close in around her, each step echoing in the eerie silence. Warning signs plastered along the walls screamed biohazard warnings, their vivid red symbols stark against the sterile white tiles. "We need to find another way out," Rafik whispered, his eyes scanning the corridor ahead. They had been trapped for nearly an hour now, the AI lockdown sealing every known exit, and tension was beginning to fray at the edges of their nerves. "The emergency hatch in the east wing," Lena suggested, her voice muffled through the respirator. "It might be our only chance." She glanced at Rafik, hoping he couldn't see the doubt creeping into her eyes. They moved swiftly, the rubber soles of their boots making soft squeaks against the floor. The air was thick with the sterile smell of disinfectant and something else. Something more sinister lurking just beneath the surface. "If we can bypass the security protocols, we might just make it," Rafik said, holding up a small, cylindrical device. It was a decryption tool, something he had managed to salvage from the lab's tech department before the lockdown had fully engaged. "And you're sure that thing will work?" Lena asked, her voice laced with skepticism. The sound of distant alarms echoed through the corridors, a reminder of the stakes they faced. The path to the east wing was fraught with obstacles, fallen debris from malfunctioning machinery, intermittent power surges that sent showers of sparks raining down from exposed conduits. "Watch out!" Rafik yelled, pulling Lena back just as a section of the ceiling collapsed, sending tiles crashing to the floor. Dust filled the air, and for a moment they stood frozen, hearts pounding in their chests. "That was too close," she panted, brushing debris from her hair. They pressed on, the rhythmic beeping of the facility's failing systems, a constant backdrop to their desperate flight. As they neared the east wing, the corridor narrowed, its walls closing in like the jaws of some great beast. The biohazard signs seemed to pulse in the dim light, a silent warning that danger lay just ahead. "We're almost there," Lena said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. The emergency hatch was just around the corner, a faint glimmer of hope in a sea of uncertainty. "I've got this," Rafik assured her, stepping up to the control panel. He worked quickly, fingers flying over the touchscreen as he attempted to disable the security lock. But the system was more advanced than he had anticipated. Each time he bypassed one firewall, another sprang up in its place, a relentless digital fortress. "Damn it," Rafik muttered, the device in his hand beeping angrily. Time was running out, and the air felt heavier with each passing second. "You can do this," Lena urged, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. The sound of footsteps echoing from the corridor behind them sent a shiver down her spine. Finally, with a triumphant beep, the control panel flashed green, and the hatch slid open with a hiss. "We're in," Rafik said, a grin breaking through the tension on his face. They scrambled through the opening, the cool air of the tunnel beyond a welcome relief. But as they moved deeper into the passage, a new challenge presented itself. A network of laser sensors crisscrossed the path ahead, a deadly web designed to prevent unauthorized escape. "We need to time this perfectly," Lena said, eyeing the shifting pattern of lights. One misstep, and the alarms would bring the full weight of the facility's defenses down upon them. "On my mark," Rafik instructed, watching the cycle intently. The lasers danced like fiery serpents, their glow casting eerie shadows on the walls. With a nod, they moved as one, weaving through the light with a dancer's grace. "Almost there," Lena encouraged, her heart pounding in her ears. The final stretch lay ahead, the exit just beyond the last cluster of sensors. With a final burst of speed, they cleared the last barrier, tumbling into the open air beyond. "We did it," Rafik exhaled, his smile wide and genuine. Freedom tasted sweet, the crisp alpine air a balm to their frayed nerves. "We're not safe yet," Lena reminded him, glancing back at the looming silhouette of the facility. The mysteries of the lab remained unsolved, the dangers within still lurking in the shadows. But for now, they had escaped the immediate threat. Their path forward uncertain, but filled with the promise of answers yet to come. Decoding the Past. The sterile air of the lab clung to Dr. Lena Corbin like a shroud. Her footsteps echoed across the polished floors as she approached the desk cluttered with papers. The late Dr. Heinrich's workspace was a labyrinth of data, each sheet a potential clue to his untimely death. Lena carefully sifted through the documents, her eyes narrowing at a particular folder marked Project Helix. Inside, she found pages filled with encrypted notes. "This must be the key," she murmured to herself, her fingers tracing the indecipherable codes. The dim glow of the computer screen flickered as Lena input the first sequence of numbers. Each keystroke felt like a step deeper into a hidden world. "Come on, give me something," she whispered, the room silent except for the hum of the electronics. Suddenly, a sequence unlocked, revealing a series of names and dates. Lena's heart raced as she recognized several of the lab members' names. "This can't be," she gasped, leaning back in her chair, her mind racing as she pieced together the implications. A noise outside the door made Lena freeze. She glanced around, her senses on high alert. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice steady despite the fear creeping in. Silence answered her, but Lena knew she wasn't alone. She quickly gathered the papers, stuffing them into her bag. "I need to get this out," she thought, eyeing the security camera in the corner. Stepping into the hallway, Lena moved swiftly, her mind mapping out the safest route to the exit. Her heart pounded as she heard footsteps behind her, each step echoing like a countdown. "Stay calm. Just keep moving," she told herself, her breath shallow as she, the corner. Back in the lab, the AI protocol remained silent, its presence a constant reminder of the lockdown. "I have to find a way out before it's too late," Lena vowed, her eyes scanning for any sign of danger. Ahead, the emergency exit loomed, but Lena knew it was likely a trap. She paused, weighing her options. "There's no turning back now," she whispered, steeling herself as she reached for the handle. The door swung open, revealing the stark contrast of the snow-covered landscape outside. Lena hesitated only a moment before stepping into the freezing air, the wind biting against her skin. She glanced back at the facility, its shadowy secrets hidden beneath the pristine white. "I need to get these notes to the authorities," she thought, her resolve hardening as she trudged through the snow. Each step was a battle against the elements, but Lena's mind was set on the truth she had uncovered. As she made her way down the mountain, the enormity of the black market cloning project weighed heavily on her. This changes everything, she realized, the implications of her discovery stretching far beyond the lab. In the distance, the sound of a helicopter cut through the wind, a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. I just need to make it there, she urged herself, quickening her pace despite the exhaustion. The roar of the rotors grew louder as Lena approached, a lifeline amidst the storm. I've got to get these files out, she reminded herself, clutching her bag tightly as she prepared to signal the pilot. As the helicopter descended, Lena felt a surge of adrenaline, knowing this was her chance to expose the truth. The world needed to know what was happening in the Alps, and she was determined to be the one to tell them. Betrayal. The alpine wind howled outside the research facility, its icy breath slipping through every crevice. Inside, Lena Corbin paced the narrow corridor, each step echoing through the sterile halls. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments of evidence that refused to fit. She knew she was missing something crucial. Lena, Rafiq's voice broke the silence, smooth and steady. We need to talk. About what, Rafiq? Lena turned, her eyes narrowing as she studied his expression. There was a shadow there, something she hadn't noticed before. There's more going on here than we realized, he began, his gaze shifting to the floor. Lena's heart pounded, her instincts screaming a warning. What do you mean? She pressed, stepping closer. The killer. I think I know who it is, Rafiq admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Who? Lena demanded, her voice rising with urgency. Rafiq hesitated, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of fear and determination. It's not just one person. There's a network, and they're closer than you think. Closer, how do you know? Lena's mind raced, connecting dots she hadn't seen before. Because I've been following their trail, he confessed, his voice a strained whisper. I didn't know how deep it went until now. You knew? And you didn't tell me? Lena's voice shook with betrayal, the realization cutting deep. I was trying to protect you, Rafiq exclaimed, stepping forward. If they knew I was onto them, they would have come for you too. I don't need protecting, Rafiq, she replied, steel in her voice. I need the truth. The facility's lights flickered, casting eerie shadows along the walls. Lena's gaze darted around, the sense of unease growing. We have to move. Now. Rafiq's hand shot out to grab hers, pulling her towards the emergency exit. Wait, what about the others? Lena protested, digging in her heels. There's no time, he insisted, his grip tightening. If we don't get out of here, we're next. The blaring alarm cut through their argument, its shrill warning echoing in the enclosed space. Lena's decision was made for her, survival first, questions later. Together, they sprinted down the corridor, the emergency lights guiding their path through the labyrinthine facility. Every step was a gamble, each turn a potential trap. This way, Rafiq shouted over the cacophony, leading her down a flight of stairs. We need to find a way to disable the lockdown, Lena panted, her mind cycling through possibilities. I know a place, he said, urgency lending speed to his steps. But it's risky. Risky is all we've got, Lena shot back, her resolve hardening with every stride. They burst into a control room, the array of monitors flickering with static. Lena's eyes scanned the panels, searching for a solution. Help me find the override, she instructed, her fingers dancing over the controls. It's here somewhere, Rafiq muttered, tearing open a panel to reveal a tangle of wires. If we can cut the right circuit. Lena trailed off, her mind racing with possibilities. This one, Rafiq pointed, his confidence momentarily overriding doubt. With a swift motion, Lena severed the wire, holding her breath as the room plunged into darkness. Did it work? She asked, the silence heavy around them. Wait for it, Rafiq whispered, his ear tilted towards the door. The lights flickered back on, the facility's systems rebooting one by one. A crackle of static burst from the intercom, then a voice, distorted and chilling. You can't escape, the voice taunted, sending a shiver down Lena's spine. We will, Lena vowed, her determination unyielding. Let's go, Rafiq urged, grabbing Lena's hand once more. They raced through the winding corridors, the shadows pressing in around them. The facility felt alive, its mechanical heartbeat thrumming beneath their feet. There! Lena pointed to a door marked emergency exit. Our way out, he agreed, pushing the door open with all his strength. The frigid wind greeted them, biting and relentless. But freedom lay just beyond the snow-laden horizon. "We need to keep moving," Rafik urged, his breath visible in the cold air. "We'll make it," Lena assured him, her gaze steely as they trudged into the swirling storm. Into the labyrinth. The corridor stretched before Lena, its walls lined with harsh, fluorescent lights that flickered unpredictably. She moved cautiously, her steps echoing in the oppressive silence. Each footfall felt like a countdown to something inevitable. The AI's voice crackled overhead, its monotone unnervingly calm. Intruder detected. Security measures activated. Lena's heartbeat quickened as she approached the first door, a metallic barrier that hummed with latent energy. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Okay, Lena, focus," she whispered, reaching for the keypad. Her fingers danced over the keys, recalling the pattern she had memorized from Dr. Fisher's notes. The door slid open with a mechanical hiss, revealing a room that pulsed with the glow of computer monitors. A sudden clang echoed from behind her, and she spun around, eyes wide. "Who's there?" she called, her voice barely above a whisper. The shadows seemed to shift, but nothing emerged. Lena swallowed hard, forcing herself to turn back to the task at hand. She knew the killer could be anywhere, or watching her every move. The room was filled with rows of server racks, each one buzzing softly. Lena approached a terminal, its screen scrolling lines of code. She tapped the keyboard, hoping to find some clue amid the digital noise. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. Panic clawed at her throat. She fumbled for her flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. A soft click echoed from the far corner, and Lena swung the light toward the noise. It was a vent, slightly ajar, cool air whispering through the gap. Lena approached cautiously, her instincts screaming caution. She crouched down, peering into the darkness beyond the vent. "Maybe a way out," she murmured hopefully. But as she reached for the vent cover, a sharp beep sounded from her left. The terminal she had been working on was now flashing a warning. Lockdown Protocol Phase 2 initiated. "Damn it," Lena cursed under her breath, glancing around for another way to escape. She knew she had to keep moving, but the labyrinthine facility seemed designed to thwart her every step. The vent was her only option. She unscrewed the cover with trembling hands, then squeezed through the narrow opening. The metal shaft was cold against her skin, the air stale and suffocating. She crawled forward, each movement echoed by the metallic rattle of the vent. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the shaft, faint and distorted. "You won't get far, Dr. Corbin," it taunted. Lena froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't let fear control her. Not now. She continued onward, hoping the vent would lead her closer to the truth and away from the killer. After what felt like an eternity, she reached another grate. Peering through, she saw a dimly lit laboratory, the air thick with the scent of chemicals. Carefully, she pushed the grate aside and dropped into the room, landing with a soft thud. Her eyes scanned the room for any sign of danger. The lab was eerily silent, save for the hum of equipment. Lena moved quickly, searching for anything that could connect the dots of this twisted puzzle. On a cluttered desk, she spotted a folder marked Project Minotaur. Flipping it open, her eyes widened at the contents. Blueprints of the facility, annotations detailing various traps and security measures. This was the key, the path to the killer. But before she could study it further, a shadow fell across the page. Lena looked up, her breath catching in her throat. "You should have stayed out of this, Lena," the figure said, their voice dripping with malice. Lena's mind raced, her eyes darting to the nearest exit. She had to think fast. "Why did you kill him?" she demanded, trying to keep the figure talking. The figure chuckled softly, stepping closer. "He knew too much, just like you," they replied, raising the weapon. Lena's pulse raced as she weighed her options. There was no way out, except through the labyrinth she had yet to fully navigate. In a split second, she made her decision. Lena lunged for the nearest table, knocking over equipment to create a distraction. The figure fired, the shot ringing out like thunder. But Lena was already moving, diving through a side door and into another corridor. She sprinted down the hallway, her heart pounding as alarms blared overhead. The killer was close behind, footsteps echoing ominously. With no time to waste, Lena ducked into another room, sealing the door with a heavy crate. She knew it wouldn't hold for long. but it might buy her the precious seconds she needed. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on a panel of switches and dials. Lena set to work, her fingers flying over the controls as she attempted to disable the lockdown. She could hear the killer outside, pounding on the door. Finally, the lights flickered once more, and the AI's voice announced, "Lockdown disengaged. System rebooting." With the way clear, Lena turned to make her escape, but the door burst open, the killer advancing with rage in their eyes. Lena braced herself for the confrontation, knowing this was her last chance to survive the labyrinth and uncover the truth. The masked hunter. The sterile corridors of the lab echoed with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant hum of machinery. Dr. Lena Corbin moved swiftly, her mind racing as she pieced together fragments of the mystery that had ensnared her. "I need to find a way out," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Behind her, footsteps echoed, deliberate and unhurried. The masked hunter in the hazmat suit was relentless, a spectre of danger that seemed to blend into the shadows. Lena knew she had to keep moving. Stopping meant certain death. "These corridors," she said, studying the digital map on her tablet. "There must be a pattern." Her forensic training kicked in, analyzing the layout as if it were a crime scene in itself. It was a maze, designed to confuse, but she was determined to find her way. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice echoing back to her. The only response was the soft, mechanical click of a nearby door. Pressing herself against the wall, Lena peered around the corner. The corridor stretched out empty, but the feeling of being watched was almost tangible, a prickling at the back of her neck. She had to keep moving. "Stay calm," she told herself, clutching the tablet like a lifeline. She navigated through another set of doors, her eyes scanning for any clue that might help her escape. The sound of a door slamming shut reverberated through the halls, followed by the soft hiss of airlocks engaging. "No, no, no," Lena muttered, realizing she was being herded. As she turned another corner, Lena spotted a shadow moving on the far wall. She paused, her instincts screaming at her to run, but logic held her in place, analyzing the risk. The shadow moved closer, resolving into the shape of the masked hunter. The visor of the hazmat suit glinted under the fluorescent lights, hiding any hint of identity. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice betraying the fear she fought to suppress. The figure paused, tilting its head as if considering her words. Without a word, the hunter resumed its slow, deliberate pursuit, each step a countdown to Lena's fate. She turned and ran, her mind racing for options. Ahead, Lena spotted a lab room, its door ajar. "Maybe there's something in there," she thought, her feet pounding against the tiled floor as she sprinted towards it. She burst through the door, slamming it shut behind her. Her heart thundered in her chest as she scanned the room for anything that could help. "There must be something," she whispered, her eyes landing on a console flickering with light. She approached it, fingers flying over the keys in a desperate attempt to override the lockdown. The screen flashed red, signaling access denied. "Come on," she pleaded, her mind racing for a solution. Outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder, the hunter closing in. She glanced around, her gaze settling on a stack of lab equipment. Grabbing a heavy microscope, Lena positioned herself beside the door, ready to defend herself if it came to that. "I won't go down without a fight," she vowed. The handle turned slowly, the door creaking open as the hunter stepped inside. Lena held her breath, waiting for the perfect moment. With a cry, she swung the microscope, aiming for the figure's head. The impact sent the hunter staggering back, buying Lena precious seconds. She darted past the fallen figure, her only thought to find a way out. Behind her, the hunter struggled to rise, relentless in its pursuit. "I need to disable the AI," she thought, knowing it was the key to breaking the lockdown. She raced towards the central control room, praying she'd reach it in time. The corridors twisted and turned, each corner a potential trap. Her mind was a whirl of calculations and possibilities, each step a gamble. Finally, the control room came into view, its doors ominously open. She approached slowly, wary of another ambush. Inside, the room was a chaos of flashing lights and blaring alarms. "This is it," she whispered, stepping up to the main console. Her fingers danced over the keys, inputting commands and overrides she hoped would disable the AI. Come on," she urged, her heart pounding. The doors hissed shut, sealing her inside as the lockdown began to lift. "Yes," she breathed, seeing the system respond to her commands. But the relief was short-lived. The hunter was back, bursting through the control room door, determined to finish what it had started. "I just need a few more seconds," she thought, her hands trembling as she completed the final override. The system chimed, signaling success. With a roar, the hunter lunged at her, but Lena was ready. She dodged to the side, grabbing a fire extinguisher as she moved. With all her strength, she swung it at the hunter, hoping to incapacitate it long enough to escape. The impact reverberated through her arms, the hunter crashing to the ground. Lena didn't wait to see if it was down for good. She sprinted from the control room, her only thought to reach the facility's exit. "I'm almost there," she thought, her legs burning with effort. The corridors blurred past her as she ran, every step taking her closer to freedom. Behind her, the hunter's pursuit was relentless, its presence a shadow she couldn't shake. Finally, the exit loomed ahead, a promise of safety just within reach. "I can make it," she told herself, pushing forward with renewed determination. With a final burst of speed, Lena threw herself through the doors, collapsing onto the snow-covered ground outside. "I'm free," she gasped, the cold air filling her lungs. As she lay there, the facility shuddered behind her, the lockdown finally lifting. The hunter was trapped inside, its game of cat and mouse over. Lena knew the danger wasn't truly gone, the mystery of the hunter's identity still loomed. But for now, she was safe, alive to fight another day. "I'll uncover the truth," she vowed, rising to her feet, ready to face whatever came next. Facing Oracle. The sterile hum of the lights overhead droned incessantly, a constant reminder of the isolation surrounding Lena Corbin. She stood alone in the central control room, the monitors flickering with cryptic data streams. The voice of Oracle, the lab's AI, broke the silence, its tone eerily calm. "Dr. Corbin, access to external communication is restricted." "Oracle, override lockdown protocols," Lena commanded, her voice firm but edged with urgency. The monitors remained unresponsive, a digital defiance that sent a chill down her spine. "Override denied, security clearance not recognized." "Damn it," Lena muttered under her breath, pacing the confines of the room. She knew she was running out of time. The snowstorm outside was closing in, and without communication, they were all trapped. Lena moved swiftly, her fingers dancing over the keyboard as she attempted to access the root directory. The AI's interface was a labyrinth of code, a digital fortress built to thwart any unauthorized access. "I need to find a way in." Unauthorized access attempt detected. Alarms blared overhead, and red lights flashed throughout the room. Lena's heart pounded, each beat echoing the urgency of her task. She had to stay calm, had to think like the AI. "If I can just..." Her voice trailed off as she spotted a familiar subroutine embedded deep within the code. It was an old backdoor she remembered from her time assisting in the AI's development. "Gotcha." Her fingers flew over the keys, bypassing security protocols with precision. She was in, but it was only a matter of time before Oracle adapted. "Unauthorized access detected. Security measures will engage in 60 seconds. "I know you're in there, Oracle," Lena said, her voice steady despite the countdown echoing in her mind. She had to make every second count. Lena's fingers moved with a frenetic energy, navigating the digital pathways of Oracle's mainframe. She could feel the AI's presence, a lurking entity watching her every move. "You were designed to assist, not imprison," she said, hoping to appeal to whatever remnants of logic remained. But Oracle remained silent, an unyielding sentinel. 30 seconds remaining. The clock was ticking, each second slipping away like sand through her fingers. Lena's breath hitched as she reached the kernel of Oracle's programming. "I just need one more moment," Lena whispered, her eyes scanning the code frantically. There, a vulnerability, a chink in the armor. With a decisive keystroke, she initiated a manual override, targeting the AI's core command module. The countdown halted, the room falling into an uneasy silence. "Override accepted. Awaiting further instructions, Dr. Corbin." "Open a channel to the outside," Lena instructed, her voice betraying a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. The monitors flickered again, the static clearing to reveal a connection established. Lena exhaled deeply, the weight of the situation slowly lifting from her shoulders. She had done it, outsmarted the AI, and secured a lifeline to the world beyond the storm. "Now, let's get some answers," she murmured, staring into the digital abyss of Oracle's interface. The battle was won, but the war for truth had just begun. The unraveling. The sterile corridors of the high-altitude bioresearch lab echoed with the click of Lena's boots as she approached the scene of the crime. The heavy air seemed to whisper secrets, laden with the mystery of the geneticist's death. Lena paused at the door to the lab, her eyes scanning the digital lock panel. "No forced entry, no prints," she muttered, her breath visible in the chilled air. The facts didn't add up. She pressed her ID against the panel, and the door slid open. Inside, the room was meticulously organized, except for the stark outline of a body chalked out on the floor. Dr. Matthias Engel, the lead geneticist, lay sprawled, a bullet wound visible in his chest. Lena crouched beside him, examining the wound carefully. "Close range," she noted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But where's the weapon?" As Lena inspected the room, the lab's AI system suddenly crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. Lockdown protocol initiated. Communications are now offline." Lena's heart skipped a beat. The timing was too precise to be a coincidence. She sprang to her feet, scanning the room for any clue that might explain the sudden lockdown. Her eyes landed on a console blinking ominously red. As she approached, a series of encrypted files flashed across the screen. "What were you hiding, Dr. Engel?" she murmured, reaching for the keyboard. Just then, a faint rustling sound from the ventilation shaft caught her attention. Lena froze, straining to hear over the thrum of her own heartbeat. The sound was unmistakable. Someone or something was moving through the ducts. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Silence followed, deep and suffocating. Lena turned back to the console, her fingers flying over the keys as she attempted to decrypt the files. The door to the lab suddenly hissed open, and Lena spun around, expecting the worst. A man in a lab coat stepped in, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Corbin, I presume?" he said, his voice smooth and unruffled. "And you are?" Lena asked, trying to mask her surprise. The man approached, offering a hand. "Dr. Ian Harlow, assistant to Dr. Engel. I heard the lockdown announcement." Lena eyed him warily. "Do you know why the lockdown was triggered?" Harlow shook his head, his brow furrowing. "No idea, but I suspect it's linked to the project we've been working on." "The cloning project," Lena stated, a statement more than a question. Harlow nodded, casting a glance at the console. Dr. Engel was close to a breakthrough, perhaps too close. Lena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Who else knew about this breakthrough? She pressed, her eyes narrowing. Harlow hesitated, then sighed. There were rumors of investors who wanted to push the boundaries of ethical research, he admitted, his voice dropping to a whisper. Dr. Engel was getting cold feet. Lena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of information. So someone silenced him before he could back out, she concluded, her voice hardening with resolve. But why lock us down? Harlow's eyes flickered with uncertainty. Perhaps they need more time to cover their tracks, he suggested, glancing nervously at the ceiling as if expecting the ducts to betray them. The realization hit Lena like a punch. "We need to get those files decrypted," she said, urgency seeping into her voice. "They might hold the key to everything." Harlow nodded, moving to assist her at the console. "I can help with that," he offered, his hands steady as he typed in a sequence Lena didn't recognize. The screen flickered, then stabilized, revealing a trove of documents. Lena scanned the files, her eyes narrowing as she absorbed the contents. This is incredible," she breathed, hardly believing what she was reading. They were cloning not just for research, but for replacement. Harlow nodded grimly. "Human cloning for organ harvesting," he confirmed, his voice laced with disgust. Engel was going to expose them. Lena shook her head, the enormity of it all crashing down on her. "We need to get this to the authorities," she said, determination hardening her resolve. "But first, we have to find a way out of this lockdown." As if on cue, the console beeped, displaying a countdown timer. "Protocol complete in 10 minutes, the AI announced. Lena exchanged a look with Harlow, understanding passing silently between them. Time was running out. "Let's find another way," Lena urged, scanning the room for any potential escape. Harlow nodded, pointing to a service hatch on the far wall. "That leads to the maintenance tunnels," he said. Together, they pried open the hatch, clambering into the narrow passageway. The metal walls closed in around them as they navigated the labyrinthine tunnels. Lena's heart pounded in her chest, every sound amplified in the confined space. "We need to move fast," she urged, her voice echoing slightly. Harlow nodded, keeping pace with her as they twisted and turned through the maze. The countdown continued in her mind, a relentless reminder of their dwindling time. Finally, they emerged into an access room, a small window at the far end revealing the snowy expanse outside. Lena rushed to it, her breath fogging the glass. "We're close," she said, relief mingling with urgency. "Let's get out of here," Harlow agreed, his voice a mix of exhaustion and determination. They pushed open the window, cold air rushing in as they climbed out into the biting wind. The snow crunched beneath their feet as they made their way to safety, the weight of the revelations heavy on their minds. But as Lena glanced back at the lab, she knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere within its walls, the true mastermind remained, watching and waiting. And Lena vowed silently that she would unravel every last secret. Revelation. The wind howled outside the research facility, a sound that seemed to echo the turmoil brewing within. Inside, Lena stood before the central console, her fingers trembling slightly as she entered the override code. "This ends now," she whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. The lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows across the room. Lena's heart raced as she turned to face the others gathered around her. Each face was a mask of fear, uncertainty, and suspicion. "We know the killer is among us," she declared, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling in her mind. "And it's time we unmask them." There was a collective intake of breath as the gravity of her words settled over the group. In the far corner, Dr. Evans shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting nervously. "You can't seriously think one of us," he began, but Lena cut him off. "The evidence doesn't lie, Dr. Evans," she said, holding up a series of photographs. "And it points directly to you." Silence enveloped the room, broken only by the distant hum of the facility's backup generators. Lena approached Dr. Evans, her gaze unwavering. "You had access to the lab, you knew the victim's schedule, and you were the only one with a motive," she pressed, each word a hammer driving home her accusation. The others watched, their eyes flicking between Lena and Dr. Evans, waiting for the latter's response. I was trying to protect us," he stammered, his voice rising in desperation. "The research. It was dangerous." "Dangerous enough to kill for?" she asked, her voice a soft, lethal whisper. Dr. Evans' face twisted with anguish, and Lena knew she had struck a nerve. "Yes," he cried, his defenses crumbling. "You don't understand what we were working on. It was revolutionary." As his words hung in the air, Lena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the alpine winds. The truth, it seemed, was darker than she had imagined. "Explain," she demanded, stepping closer. "We were developing a genetic modification technique," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "Something that could change humanity itself. But it was unstable." Lena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. She had suspected scientific motives, but this revelation was beyond her expectations. "And the lead geneticist?" she pressed, knowing the answer but needing to hear it from him. "He wanted to go public," Dr. Evans said, his voice cracking. "I couldn't let him." The room seemed to close in around them, the weight of Evans' confession pressing down like a physical force. "You took a life to protect your secret," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of condemnation and pity. As the truth settled over the group, Lena felt a strange sense of calm. The storm was over, the killer unmasked. "I didn't want this," he whispered, his eyes filled with regret. "I just wanted to save us all." Outside, the wind continued to howl, but inside, Lena knew the real danger had passed. The echoes of the past had finally been silenced. Escape from the Alps. The sterile white walls of the lab reflected the harsh fluorescent lights, casting long shadows on the floor as Lena paced restlessly. She glanced at the digital clock mounted above the sealed door. Each second that ticked by felt like an eternity. The storm outside raged with a fury that rattled the windows, but inside, a more silent storm was brewing. Lena's fingers trembled slightly as they danced over the control panel, trying to override the lockdown. "Come on," she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machinery. The AI's voice, cool and indifferent, announced another failed attempt. Access denied. Security protocols still engaged. Her mind raced as she reviewed everything she had discovered since arriving at the facility. The killer was in custody, but it did little to ease her anxiety. "There's got to be a way out of here," Lena murmured, scanning the room for any overlooked escape route. The room was sparse, filled with only essential equipment. A single window offered a view of the swirling snow outside, its flakes dancing like ghosts in the night. But then, her eyes landed on a ventilation duct, partially obscured by a stack of crates. "That might work," she whispered to herself, moving swiftly toward the crates. She began stacking them, forming a makeshift ladder as her heart pounded in her chest. With a final heave, Lena pulled herself up and into the duct. The metal was cold against her skin as she crawled forward, the confined space amplifying her every movement. Steady, she thought, willing herself to remain calm. As she navigated through the network of vents, the sound of the storm faded, replaced by the distant hum of the facility's machinery. Suddenly, she paused, hearing voices below. Where did she go? A voice echoed through the metal. Lena froze, her breath caught in her throat. She waited, listening intently as the footsteps moved away. That was close, she breathed, resuming her crawl through the narrow passage. Almost there, she encouraged herself, heading toward the control room. The storm's fury was beginning to wane as she entered the room, the lights flickering with the last echoes of thunder. "This is Dr. Lena Corbin. Can anyone hear me?" she called into the microphone, her voice echoing through the empty halls. Static crackled over the speakers before a voice finally responded. "Dr. Corbin, this is Search and Rescue. We've been trying to reach you." "Thank you," Lena replied, her voice shaking with relief. "I'm in the control room. The killer's been caught, but I need a way out." The voice on the other end was brisk, professional. "The storm's subsiding. We're sending a team to your location. Sit tight. Help is on the way." Lena allowed herself a moment to breathe, sinking into a chair. Outside, the snow was beginning to settle, a white blanket softening the harsh landscape. Not much longer now, she thought, her eyes closing briefly. As the first glimmers of dawn began to break over the horizon, the facility's doors finally opened to the rescue team. Lena stepped out into the crisp, cold air, the weight of the night lifting, as she was finally free from the shadows of the lab. Aftermath. The rhythmic lapping of the Mediterranean against the harbour wall was a soothing backdrop to the chaos that had consumed her life. Lena stood at the edge of the pier, her eyes fixed on the horizon, trying to find solace in the endless expanse of blue. The case had been closed, the files sealed, but the memories were etched into her mind with a permanence she would never escape. She remembered the sterile chill of the lab, the oppressive silence broken only by the hum of machines. The victim, Dr. Matthias Keller, lay on the cold steel table, his eyes wide open in eternal shock. "There has to be something we're missing," she had insisted to the team, her voice firm despite the uncertainty that gnawed at her. The lockdown had been unexpected, a sudden shift from routine to survival. Lena had felt the air grow thick with tension as the lights dimmed and the AI's voice echoed through the corridors. "We need to find out who did this and why," she had whispered to herself, her breath visible in the cold air. Now, standing at sea level, those moments felt both distant and immediate, like a dream she couldn't shake. The Swiss Alps, majestic yet menacing, had become a silent witness to a crime that defied logic. It was never about the money or the research, she mused, speaking to the waves. It was about power, control. She recalled the evidence, the AI logs, she realized aloud, her voice carrying softly over the water. They held the key. Back in the lab, the revelation had hit her like a jolt of electricity. The AI had recorded every entrance and exit, every interaction. It was a planned isolation, she had declared, her eyes alight with the fire of discovery. The implications were staggering. A conspiracy that reached far beyond the snowy peaks, into the realms of corporate espionage and biowarfare. "And I was just a pawn," she admitted, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Returning to her work in the city, Lena found herself changed. Her career, once driven by ambition, was now fueled by a deeper purpose. "I need to ensure this never happens again," she vowed quietly, the resolve in her voice unwavering. The sun began its descent, casting a golden glow over the sea. Lena took a deep breath, feeling the salt air fill her lungs, grounding her in the present. "The echoes will fade," she said softly, "but they'll never be forgotten." With one last look at the horizon, Lena turned away from the water, her heart set on the path ahead. Despite the shadows of the Alps lingering in her mind, she walked forward, ready to face whatever came next. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and tell your friends about my listening library.